Hello, people. How are we all doing on this fine Sunday, sort of mid-morning? After that pile of rubbish yesterday. To my right is Jay, and Jay's here to give you his thoughts on that, and quite a lot of faults it is. Jay, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. I only just managed to wake myself up at full time to drag myself back home after probably one of the worst games of football I've ever sat through in person. Yeah, it was hard work, mate, wasn't it? But I hope everyone's well. How are you, mate?
No, I'm all right, man. I'm all right. Obviously done the videos yesterday. A lot of people on the after fault, which was really good. Like people speaking, people from different, even a new person come on from a different country, which is always nice.
Mm.
People are flat. Let me admit, Jay, I'm going to be honest. People are flat. People are looking at this and thinking, like, is this what we've become now? Do you know what I'm saying? Which is sad to a point.
Yeah, I wanted to quickly touch on that afterthought because I obviously come back from the game. I wanted to like at the right time try and catch up on what people thought. I sat through the 2 minutes of highlights they could find on Match of the Day, watched the afterthought, and I thought like there was so many interesting people that come on and had their say on what they thought of the game on how we're doing. So I thought it was a brilliant video, and shout out to everyone who came on and spoke. And then I caught a bit of a Twitter space that you did last night and heard some really interesting opinions on there. And
Mm,
you're right, everyone feels exactly the same. It's like we're all in this together and we're all watching the club just slowly die and slowly rot in front of us because
mm,
you cast your mind back just a couple of years. I don't want to do the comparisons with different managers and stuff like that, but even just enjoying watching the football, it weren't necessarily pretty, but you knew we at least had a threat. Yesterday we just didn't carry a threat all game, did we? Maybe in the last 20 minutes after the subs had come on, where we actually looked like we were controlling the game, but against Sean Dyche's Everton at home, no disrespect to Everton, but they struggle to score goals. Yes, they're pretty tight defensively, but for me, as a Premier League manager, Lopetegui's got to know what he's in for with Sean Dyche. And Sean Dyche had one goal in mind yesterday. It was don't concede. He didn't really care what else happened because his whole game plan, you could see how he'd set up. His whole game plan was don't let them score and see
yeah.
if we can nick one. And they nearly did with that header that Fabianski saved. And they had a couple of half chances, but nothing really clear cut. But you've got to be aware of that. You've got to be ready to expect what Sean Dyche and Everton are going to do when it comes to London Stadium. And I found it particularly interesting when I was watching Match of the Day this morning, when they were talking about like West Ham as a team, and they were talking about how disappointing we've been, and they're absolutely right. Like this hasn't been what we expected after 140 million pounds spent. A team that we thought was improved from last season that has gotten worse in pretty much every department. And then they compared it with Everton, who have a pretty similar record to us in the league. I don't know what the league looks like. I can't remember, but they're
Mhm.
probably a couple of points behind us. And they were
Yeah.
saying about how well they're doing. And I'm like, that's the levels that we have set as West Ham United. We shouldn't be looking at Sean Dyche's Everton and going, Christ, they're going to have a lot of the ball today and they're going to cause us problems. We should be looking at them going, right, they're going to sit deep. This is how we're going to break them down. But the biggest tell for me was in the second half. It may not have translated on TV. Todibo picked the ball up. Everton were in a low block. We had it just inside our own half. Mate, it was like watching 10 statues. Like nobody was moving. And Todibo's just stood there with the ball at his feet. Everyone is just standing still in front of him. And I'm like, how do you expect to break a team down? I'm not asking for crazy, like third, fourth, fifth man running, but I'm
Mm.
asking for someone to drop in and go, I'll take the ball from you and I'll be the guy that tries to create something. But instead, we just, as everyone saw, we just passed it sideways and passed it sideways and passed it sideways. And I don't understand I don't understand where these signs are of improvement. Because if you looked at the game and you looked at a 0-0 against Everton, and if we could have turned around and gone, well, actually, we had 65% of the ball, we had 25 shots on goal, Pickford had a
Mm.
blinder, they were really regimented in defence, and it wasn't our day. If you could have said that, I'd have gone, do you know what? Fair enough. Like it wasn't our day. But instead, like, let me just, and I know stats don't tell the whole story, but some of the stats I got in front of me, we were behind in possession, expected goals, shots. We committed more fouls. We made fewer passes. We made fewer tackles than Everton. Like that tells you everything you need to know about how passive we were in the game. I know they don't tell the
Yeah.
whole story, but that is damning, mate. That is absolutely damning. what just a flat performance and a flat fan base we got now.
I've got to be honest, mate. It don't look good. It don't look good. Like, especially with a team yesterday that, let's be honest, that's our strongest team on paper currently, and we look like we don't know how to attack. We've got defenders who I will get onto in regards to Wan-Bissaka, who people were booing that he come off, but then when you look at the clip that's gone viral to a point of Crescencio Somerville, your left winger, running his heart and soul back to try and get back to save the day for us, and you got Wan-Bissaka jogging, and not even jogging, it's like a mid jog, and he has Emerson go past him, Tadibo go past him, Somerville go past him. There's a lot of issues at this club, and there's a lot of problems where people are very, as I say, very flat. Like it's very hard to give any positives now, if I'm being honest.
Isn't that so? First and foremost, I hadn't seen that clip until last night when I heard it mentioned by, I think it was George on the Twitter space.
Yeah.
So fair play to him, because I hadn't seen that clip, and I was I had the wrong angle to sort of see that was happening. I sit the other end of the ground to where that was happening. I saw it was a poor pass from Bowen. Wan-Bissaka that can't reach it. But to your point, I've watched that clip, and he's like, just player after player is sprinting past him in blue or in claret. And how on earth is Somerville the man who manages to get back? Fair play to Somerville, by the way, because that's not his job. But he sensed that Everton were scoring there. If he didn't make that run, Everton go through and score. And it's another shambolic piece of play from West Ham where we get cut through on the counter and a team goes through and scores. But for Crescencio Somerville, who is the one man who manages to make the yards up. So I can't... And I like Wan-Bissaka. Anyone who's seen me talk about Wan-Bissaka on here knows that I like him as a player. I was very excited for us to sign him. I think he's done really well in a few games so far for us this season. But isn't that just a symptom of how poor our discipline is and how little the players seem to care and have any kind of connection? It reminds me of second season Slaven Bilic, where you had a bunch of individuals there. They had no idea what they were doing. And we would get cut through and we'd get beat like 4-5-0 on the regular, because defensively we were a shambles and nobody really had a clue what was going on. I think in that season, if I remember rightly, I'm just purely guessing here, I'm sure we were struggling all year, and then we won like 3 games 1-0 in a row and managed to just drag ourselves out of any trouble and ended up in a really abject season.
I think it was a week. There was a week in the season where we won. I think we beat Southampton or something like that. There was a week.
I remember we beat Burnley. I was at that game. Mark Noble missed the penalty and scored the rebound, and it was awful. It was just such a bad game of football. But it was a 1-0 that you needed, and we looked back at that week, and then suddenly the season was, you're not getting relegated, you're not doing anything. Like, it's fine, and we managed to limp through.
There was I remember it, because what it was, there was a game on I think it was Southampton. I'm sure it was. When it was at home. It was a must win, and we won comfortable. I think it was 3-0 we won. I think I got that right. Yeah. So listen, I agree, mate. I agree. Obviously, the game was diabolical. First half was very bad. Second half, what do you make of the second half of you?
I felt that the substitutions were actually really good. We can talk about a couple of things here. We have asked the question, what does Carlos Soler actually do, our cardio king? I thought when he came on, him and Paqueta in front of Souček was the most dangerous we looked going forward. And it's no surprise, because yes, we had to have Thomas Souček playing in the 6/halfback role, which is not his position. You've got players who are out. Our Edson Alvarez is suspended and is back next game. So you had to do something. And I felt like Guido Rodriguez was the guy that had to be sacrificed. So I felt like the substitution was right. But it was no surprise to me that you put 2 players who actually wanted to be positive in the midfield together, and they seem to link up well. And I actually thought, and on Paqueta, I thought it was probably Paqueta's best game so far this season. I thought he was actually really good. Some of his passes, that ball for Somerville when Somerville hits the post, is absolutely sublime. And he played a couple of good passes in the second half. Danny Ings' both of his chances come from Lucas Paqueta passes as well. So in the second half, when it clicked, when we had a more attacking sort of outlook, we actually looked pretty good. But I looked back at Match of the Day for the quality of the chances. The only real, like, Ings is Pickford's save from Ings in the last minute where it deflects and he tips it over the bar was a brilliant save. And Somerville hitting the post was a good effort. Other than that, they were all pretty comfortable saves. Is the issue. Our finishing still just isn't there. So I thought we looked a lot better in the second half, but why does it take 70 minutes every week for us to actually look like a threat? It seems to be every single game we don't play for 70 minutes and then we turn it on. It's really weird.
Jack and I, the West Ham, mate.
Yeah, it really is.
1 minute we look like we can't do anything right, and then all of a sudden it clicks into gear. I thought the subs yesterday, it's an hard one with me because I think when it's going not so good, he's got the opportunity to throw subs on. Whereas last season, the ex-manager didn't have the opportunity to throw loads of subs on and try and change the right dynamic. Do you know what I mean? I thought Soler just doesn't do enough for me.
Yeah,
he just doesn't do enough. And what he does is like the basic. And it's like, oh yeah, he looked all right, but what we've seen in previous weeks, yeah, he's gonna look all right if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I thought Lucas Paqueta, that's the best game he's played this season by a long way to a point. And that says a lot because I thought the passes was good, but I thought he was trying to do too much, especially in the first half.
Just quickly on that as well. Like, you look at it, right, in a game where we were not incisive at all, and we offered no attacking threat. I actually felt from where I was sat, obviously, like, I'm happy to be like proven wrong if anyone thinks differently. I thought he was a bit passive in the first half. He was very, very similar to what we've seen. It's like you remember the first few games where the whole game he was just trying through balls as soon as he got the ball. He would get it, he would ping it, and he would lose it. And we were all going mental about what he was doing. It's like he's had that kind of coached out of him for the most part, and he gets it and he just looks for a simple pass, which is, we need somewhere in between the two. We need him to be that guy who, when he gets the ball, he wants to invite pressure. He wants to play a 1-2. He wants to get forward. I haven't seen that from him. That's all I want to see is play a simple pass, but then make the move. But he seems to just play the pass and then run away from the ball and not want it. And that's the hard bit. But in the second half, I agree. Like he probably did try to force it a bit. There was a couple of those like horrible lob through balls, but we needed someone to be like, all right, I'll try and play the pass. And it worked a few times. And in that respect, I'm like, if it's going to work a few times and not work a few times, I'm happy to take it on the chin when he plays a ball and it doesn't work. But when he got it right, it was the only way that we were actually creating anything. So I take your point. But I was pretty happy with what he did. And on Soler, I wanted to touch on that very quickly as well. I agree with you. He didn't do anything special, but wasn't it so different having a player who just mentality wise, he wanted to get on the ball, he wanted to get forward, as opposed to Guido Rodriguez, who was sitting, Souček, who was sitting, Paqueta, who in the second half was trying to push on a little bit more. Having two players in the middle who actually wanted to get forward and do something just created so much more space. We were starting to drag people out of position and we were starting to create chances. So I felt like you're probably right. He doesn't do enough. If we had someone else to bring on instead, who was an attack-minded central midfielder, then perhaps it would be different. But I was just happy he come on and he seemed to make a bit of an impact, to be honest.
I can understand that. I really can. Let's talk about Jared Bowen. Obviously, on the space last night that I've done on Twitter, people are very sort of mixed with him. I actually feel sorry for the kid to a point. I really do. I think he's been handed a situation that he's inexperienced in handling, if that makes sense. I really do generally hope Mark Noble's behind the scenes helping this kid and saying to him, right, and guiding this man, because I feel like at the minute we've got a captain that is inexperienced, doesn't know how to get into these players, and the players are just flat to a point. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes you do need a personality in there, someone who's prepared to sort of die to a point for the shirt. Do you know what I mean? Like people like who will prepare to throw their face in front of a ball if it means taking like a smack in the mouth. I feel for him. I really do. I looked at him yesterday. There was moments in that game yesterday where I thought he was trying, and I look round at him and he's looking at people saying, "Why are you so far away from me?" Like, I picked the ball up. You should be going on, right? And I feel he's getting frustrated to a point. What are you saying about Bowen, man?
Yeah, I thought he was lucky that it was Somerville that got dragged and not him. And I agree with you. I really feel for him. I love Jared Bowen, but I thought he was poor yesterday. He worked so hard, so hard. But to your point, like I still think it's the tactics that are letting him down. I don't think it's his. I don't think it's his fault. I think what we've seen from Bowen in an England shirt, where England try and get on the ball and try and keep the ball, it doesn't really suit him. He's been better in an England shirt when perhaps it's later on in a game, he comes on and he's invited to get the ball and just run at someone. And he's looked really good for England when he's doing that. But as a starter, he hasn't looked that great. It's kind of the same this season for West Ham, where we're trying to get our foot on the ball and we're trying to play it around. It's not necessarily what suits his game. I felt when Soufal came on and did what Soufal does and tried to stay wide, run beyond him and create that space, he immediately dragged the defender away and Bowen had isolated someone on the corner of the box. Granted, it didn't turn into anything, but if that's happening all game, I guarantee we're going to see the Bowen that we're used to seeing, and he's going to have more attempts on goal. He's going to be able to cut in more. He's going to be able to do more. I just feel like the tactics are letting him down, and I feel like because he's not necessarily playing in the way that he wants to play, he's sloppy on the ball as well. Like that, we talked about in the first half, that ball to Wan-Bissaka that then turns into them going through. Such a poor pass. It was a 10-yard pass. And it's not what you expect from Jarrod Bowen. So without, like, I'm not going to sit and hyper criticize Jarrod Bowen because he is our captain. He's our talisman. He's scored a number of really important goals for us and he's still got a lot of quality. He's got to pull himself out of this. I think, again, someone mentioned last night, I didn't notice, again, other side of the ground, apparently Somerville went down injured before he came off.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at it and going, I thought Bowen should have come off, personally. I thought Guilherme on for Bowen, and you'd have two guys who were actually looking to impact the game, because I thought Somerville was the biggest threat we had all game. So, granted, if he's injured, fair enough, no problem. But yeah, I thought he was lucky not to come off. And him and Antonio, like, they run their socks off. Antonio, if we touch on Antonio briefly, 20 minutes into the game, I was watching this bloke pressing on his own, and I was like, this ends badly. Like, he was doing the hard yards for the first 20 minutes and getting nowhere near, because we were so scared. We were so scared to push out of this mid-block. You had Antonio doing all the running, pressing the centre-backs, and nobody supporting him. And I was like, well, he's going to burn himself out after half an hour, isn't he? Like, if he's going to press, you have to have the team go with him. And nobody went with him. You'd have Somerville and Bowen would go with him sometimes. But again, that's not a press. That's a half press. It's 2 passes and you're out of it. It's as simple as that. So I felt for both of them yesterday. They worked really hard, but if 2 players work really hard and the team don't go with them, they're not going to produce anything. So what do you really expect?
Yeah, I know, mate. To round this video up, let's talk about our head coach, Julian Lopetegui. I don't know what else we can do. I really don't, other than get rid of this geezer. I look at him currently right now, and I see a manager or head coach, so to speak, that is trying to throw everything at it, and it's just nothing's working. Someone said this to me a while ago, and I make him, looking back now in hindsight, make him right. He's inherited a team that's a counter-attacking team, and some of these players are not possession-based players. Bowen's not really a possession-based player. He's more hit the ball on the break, and he can get us up the pitch and cause some damage that way. What do you make of Julian Lopetegui, mate?
I mean, that's it, is it? Like, I've got no words to say about him, because if you're going to change him, you would change him now, and you would add him as P45 on Monday. You would have 2 weeks, probably a week, for someone to come in and actually work with the players before going into 2 games where, let's be honest, we're going to concede a lot of goals in the next 2 games. Like, being realistic, I don't like to be defeatist. I don't like to be negative, but Newcastle away, Arsenal at home, I'm not looking forward to either of those. So realistically, if you were going to change the manager, you would do it now, and you would get someone in and give them some time to actually try and impose some kind of idea and some kind of philosophy. The problem I've got with him is some of the things he said, which are, like, there's no one lineup or one way of winning a game of football, which is the kind of thing I want to hear. I completely subscribe to that idea, right? You have to change your lineup and change your tactics based on each different opposition that you're playing. He's not shown me that. He's just not shown me that. If there was ever a time you were going to show me that, it was yesterday, when you're playing against a side that's going to defend deep. You should have played, realistically, you could have played Rodriguez, Paqueta, and Soler as your starting 3, to have 2 players who are more attack-minded than defence-minded. Again, it's harsh on Thomas Souček, who's been very consistent this season. But yesterday was not a Thomas Souček kind of game. Like when you look at how it unfolded, he didn't get into the box when we had the chance. The amount of times Antonio would drift out wide because he couldn't get on the ball otherwise. And you'd have him and a winger out wide and nobody getting in the box. And that's where you would want Thomas Souček being the third man that runs into the box and being the aerial threat. But he's clearly been coached and been told not to do that, which is the whole threat of Thomas Souček. So if you're going to play him as a deep holding midfielder, you had to play someone in the number 10 role, which we didn't do. And the whole problem that we've had all season, I've said this pretty much every single game that we've talked about, there is a vacuum in the number 10 space. Antonio is isolated. The wingers are isolated. The midfield is static. And there's a whole problem in that area. We can all see it. How can our manager not see it? He's so frightened of losing games of football now that we've just set up in the standard, like bog standard 4-3-3 that we always set up in and just hoped to nick it 1-0. That's not good enough for me. Like, that is not a tactical manager who's coming in with ideas and ways of winning football games. That is a guy who's got a squad of players and goes, this is probably my best chance of not losing this game is by playing this. And then hoping that it's 0-0. And on 60 minutes, when he makes all these changes every week, that's when we turn it on. So when we've won games, we've won them late, bar Ipswich. We've won 2 other games this season, if I'm not mistaken. Crystal Palace, he made some changes and we scored 2. Manchester United, he made some changes and we scored 2. Other than that, it hasn't worked. It just hasn't worked. So he has to change what he's doing because realistically, I say if he was going to change it, he should change it now, David Sullivan. He's not going to. We know he's not going to. We know he's probably going to get the next 2 or 3 games at least because if he was going to sack him now. We all know we ain't going to win the next 2. So we've just got to dig in realistically and we just got to try and carry on supporting the boys. It felt so miserable in a stadium yesterday. And anyone else who was there will say exactly the same. The atmosphere is never good there, but it was like a library. It was just so bad. And like compounded by the fact that Everton fans are as miserable as we are. So like the away fans were barely making any noise. We barely made any noise. And that's just it. Like the club is just dying in front of us and it's just not fun. So that's what Lopetegui's West Ham is. It's a pragmatic team that just tries not to lose football games. And if that's what we're in for the rest of the season, then dig in for the rest of the season, everyone. And let's hope that we get the change that we need at the end of the year because I don't see it happening anytime sooner.
You don't think there's going to be a change? No.
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I anyone who thinks that there is going to be a change now, like I probably hope that there is as well. Like I think I've seen enough to know that I believe this squad of players is good enough where you could rescue a pretty decent season out of this. Really, again, this is very, very, very optimistic thinking. But like 8th place is going to get European football this year. If we had ambition, you would go, we're only actually 4 or 5 points behind 8th place. Like it's not a lot when you think about it. And we're going into December, which I said a few weeks ago. December's like the litmus test. December is where you should go and win 4 or 5, maybe not 5, but where you should probably win 3 or 4 games in December. And that's where you could skyrocket up the table and suddenly be knocking on the door of 8th place. So if you were going to make that change, make it now. Sullivan's not going to make that change. Like realistically, I don't think there is a manager on a free that he will bite a bullet and choose at this stage of the season. So, yeah, I don't see a change coming, mate.
I think for me, a change has to be made. And if you don't make a change, then basically you know that he doesn't want the ambition of trying to get Europe again for another time. I look at Lopetegui. It's the wrong appointment. It always has been. Yeah, I think we'd all agree on that. Any sort of person. I don't think no West Ham fan would say that Julian Lopetegui was the first one on the hit list for West Ham. Do you know what I mean? But the problem is now that we are like a slowly sinking ship, right? Our goal difference is like -8. We're a side that look like we don't know what we're doing. We're going up against 2 teams where we've been blitzed before in the past. Like we got beat at Newcastle last year in one of the hardest losses last season out of all of them. That one hurt the most. Is losing 5-0 and 6-0, but being 3-1 up and then losing 4-3 is just sick. Yeah. And then you got Arsenal coming to town, who we all know what happened last season with them, and they was up 3-4-0 and there was an evacuation in the LS. For me, David Sullivan has got to make the call, and he's got to make the call now. And I pray and hope he does make the right call. Now, will he do it? I agree with you, Jay. I don't see it. I just don't. But it's just, I can't believe, I really seriously mean this. I can't believe how bad it's gone. I really can't. I can't pinpoint how in the space of a year to a point, we've gone from going to places like Tottenham and Arsenal and winning to then the turn of 2024 being a complete flop in the second part of last season. Manager goes this season with a flop. If we continue to go the way we're going, then we are going to be in a relegation battle. Whether or not people think we're going to stay up or not, yeah, it's by the by. At the end of the day, we shouldn't be in a relegation battle. Like, you know what I mean? West Ham United should not be in a relegation battle after competing in Europe for the last 3 out of the last 4 years. So I don't know, mate. I don't know. I'm a bit like you. Even doing this video right now with you, I'm like, fucking hell. It's just like, what is? Look how far we've dropped. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and any excitement that we had from the start of the season is just gone, isn't it? Like, we would sit here, even after Palace, like, we could sit and have a conversation and be like, oh, cool, like, it's a 2-0 win away from home. And, you know, that's the first sign that perhaps we're going to kick on. And we just haven't kicked on. Like, we haven't built any momentum. And on the manager change as well, like, I just don't have any faith in Sullivan picking the right guy. We know that he's going to turn around and go for Benitez or like Lampard or someone who is going to be another pragmatic appointment that's going to cause more problems in the fan base. If it's me, I think I said this the other day, I would want Conceição, someone like that, who's going to come in with progressive ideas, come in with a track record of success recently off the back of a really successful time with Porto, and who I'm sure would come to a big Premier League club like West Ham. I know we're not the top echelon of clubs, but we're his chance to get into the Premier League. Now is the right time where you can go, you've got 2/3 of a season here, but I know that is a risk, and I don't see David Sullivan taking that leap of faith. And the other names don't inspire me. I don't think Potter would be set up for success at West Ham because Sullivan's a nutter. Edin Terzic could be. Like, I really don't know. I don't know enough about him as a manager. He knows the club, but again, he's another pragmatic appointment. So we're in the shit, mate, is what I'm saying.
I think with Terzic, for me, I look at him, I think he's been here before. He understands what the expectation is. And he will know from being here with Bilic for them years. Do you know what I mean? I think I lean more towards him, but I said it on a few videos recently, and anyone who's watching this video right now, if he gets the sack, get on Rafa Benitez. It's on the cards, mate. 100%. Yeah. Spanish manager with a lot of a few Spanish and South American players in there. It just makes a lot of sense. Do you know what I mean? And it'd be a shame. Jay, thank you very much for coming on, mate. I really do appreciate it. Smash a like on the video. Subscribe to each on his own TV. Hit the notification bell. Look, I'm trying to get upbeat for it. I just can't. I'm trying. Also, this week is going obviously international break. But I'm going to try and do a few Q&A sessions. I enjoyed doing them with Jay last week, and it was good. Had people on different opinions and all that. So we'll probably hook something up in the middle of the week. My final thought, as I say on this final video of the weekend, is that until change is made, then this is what we're going to expect. I do fear that the next 2 games we're going to get piped and we're going to get done over. And then we come to the Leicester game on the 3rd of December, I think it is. That is massive. At the King Power, they're going to be bouncing, yeah. And if they pick up a bit of run of form, Leicester, then we could be in the mire. And them games that Jay has mentioned in this video today could mean that we're trying to win them games to stay afloat to a point. Do you know what I'm saying? But we'll see what happens there. Anyway, from me to you, take care of yourselves. And I'll see you again in the next one.